I mean, I think that the key ingredient is your team. And, you can build the most amazing properties in the world, invest as much money as you want, but if you don't have a great team, throw it all out the window. It doesn't matter how much, no amount of money can even buy a great team. And, I say that with the caveat that, yes, some people are interested in the higher level salaries or wages, but if you don't have a great team, it's all irrelevant. And I think that all starts with, to your point, one key ingredient is having a great culture.
This is Hospitality 1-to-1, conversations on the industry. Here's your host, Chris Bettis.
Welcome to the Hospitality 1-to-1 podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. You can also check us out on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Hospitality 1-to-1. We're on Twitter at Hospitality 1-to-1. We also post video versions of our podcast on YouTube. Just search for Hospitality 1-to-1. And of course, you can find us on our website, which is www.hospitality1to1.com. We also want to hear from you. Is there someone who you think we should be talking to? Let us know. You could email me at chris@hospitality1to1.com. Joining us today is Brian Waltrip. Brian is Vice President of Resort Operations for Westgate Resorts. Brian has been with Westgate since 2000. In this time, he has spearheaded recruitment, retention, leadership development, and customer service programs. Brian is a man of many talents who's either worked or trained in every resort operations department. Today, Brian oversees the company's brand as well as operational oversight for Westgate Resorts nationwide. Brian has led the resort to numerous awards and prestigious designations, including the highly coveted AAA 4-Diamond recognition. And now, Brian Waltrip. Brian, thank you so much for joining us on the Hospitality 1-to-1 podcast.
Chris, appreciate you having me.
That's great. Well, again, I appreciate you squeezing me in. Now, wanted to, if we could, just get right into it, because you've got quite the successful career, and we'd like to kind of pick your brain, if you will. I mean, you're a rare commodity in the hospitality industry. You've been with Westgate for more than 17 years, which that type of stability, of course, is unheard of virtually in the hospitality industry. What has made you so loyal to Westgate?
I think what's so amazing is Westgate really is a family culture and a company that really gives you the opportunity to make an impact on a large scale, regardless of what position you're in. They're not so concerned necessarily about just the process and procedures as much as your ability to impact and change lives in a positive way. And I think that's really what's kept me with Westgate and given me such amazing opportunities throughout my career.
How has the resort changed in the time you've been there?
Oh, the company's changed drastically. I mean, we had only a handful of properties when I first started, and now we have 25 properties with over 13,000 team members nationwide. And we really went from a small family-run operation to essentially a billion-dollar corporation.
Wow. So you guys really have come into your own over the last 17 years.
Yeah, we really have. I mean, it's been exciting to see the evolution and just see how our properties have grown. I mean, our first property that we had that started with only 16 units, that is now starting to climb above 3,000 units. And just to see the new visions, the new aspects when it comes to food and beverage, some of our new operations, our new building. I mean, I just finished traveling across the country at many of our properties, and the growth and development happening in our company is just overwhelming.
That is absolutely spectacular. And by the way, those of you who are listening right now, if you want to read more about Brian, even after this conversation, I came across a terrific article. I love the headline. It says, and I quote, "Working with Waltrip." And it was in the Timeshare News and Magazine. Remember that back in 2015?
Yeah, I actually do remember. I didn't know anyone read it, but yes, I do remember that very well.
It's a terrific article. If you get a chance, if you get a chance to read that, I would highly recommend it. Good reading. Now, I mean, obviously, you've got several years of experience in the industry, of course, 17 years plus. But is there any training you had outside of the industry that led you to drive Westgate itself to have 4 diamond properties?
I think it's really, I went to business school. I have, I've studied and been educated when it comes to business or hospitality. But I think it's really everything when it comes to day-to-day interaction with people. And I think that's really the lesson in the education we can learn is how to develop relationships and, how to inspire people or how to impact people in a positive way. I think often we look for such a structured type of education system and we think that's what's going to propel us in our future, when really it may just be an interaction with your neighbor. It may just be that opportunity when you go out to a restaurant or you go to another resort to see how someone does it a little bit different. I think your ability to study and interact and develop relationships is probably more important and will propel you further than really any set education that I've received throughout my career.
That's a terrific point you just brought up. And I wanted to unpack that for a minute because you brought up a line, you're saying going to other properties and seeing how they do things, whether it's hotels or restaurants. So when you go out to a restaurant or hotel, either for business or for pleasure, what do you look for? What are those things that you, I guess, keep your eye on when you're at either competitive properties or just additional properties across the country?
Yeah, absolutely. My wife gives me a hard time when it comes to this because it's every aspect of that property. It is to the uniforms, the way the team will greet you. It is the details, the elevators, the color selection, the carpet selection, to the housekeeping service. When you leave the room and I'll go to a hotel and I'll leave a pair of glasses that are dirty, maybe because they have sunscreen on it from the beach, and just kind of leave them over in the corner and see what that housekeeper does with it. How do they clean it? Where do they place it? I mean, every single detail. I think in a restaurant, it's the same thing. What are the items cost? What kind of unique drink selections do they have? What are those food components? What are those service standards that they're following? I think the attention to detail and understanding competition and what other successful organizations are doing is really critical to your success. The moment we stop learning, our teachings become archaic. And I think the only way that we can elevate ourselves is to really educate ourselves through, what some may call our competitors, but really some of the industry leaders.
So in other words, you do the little tests, the little things to see how the hotel or restaurant responds, and that kind of gives you a good litmus test, if you will, for their overall level of service.
Absolutely. I mean, I think anyone in this industry can spend a few days in a hotel or a single night in a restaurant and really get a good understanding of how effective that operation, but more importantly, get some great ideas on how you can, enhance your own operation.
Terrific advice here. Terrific advice. Now, I want to take a moment because we have listeners from all different ranges when it comes to the hospitality industry. Some may be more familiar than others with the diamond ratings and the star ratings. Without going into the technical, which would be kind of, I think, in the weeds, if you will, when it comes to dealing with what distinguishes a 4 and a 5, what have you, let's look at what is the big importance if someone looks at a 4-diamond property as opposed to a regular property. Where's the real difference there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got a lot of different accreditations, a lot of things you see online like Google or Expedia, TripAdvisor, all those. But you really have, when it comes to industry standards, 2 major accreditations. You have AAA and you have Forbes. AAA is our diamond ratings. Forbes is the star rating, which used to be the old mobile rating. When it's really AAA, their focus is on the quality of your property, meaning the details. And it encompasses the common areas, the bedrooms and bathrooms. And it's the square footage. It is the square footage of your mirror that you may have, the lighting in the room. It's really all the details and qualities, as well as the services you offer, whether it's valet services, shuttle services, what kind of amenities you have. That's really where AAA's focus is. On Forbes, they're not to say much different. They're different in the sense that they've shopping. They're all about the total experience. So when it comes down to Forbes and being accredited and rated with Forbes, it's about the experience that you provide to the guest, the nomenclature in which you use when a guest is checking in or departing, the type of housekeeping services, the cleanliness of the rooms. So, that process is very detailed and in-depth. I would say that AAA is probably much more well-known with, I think, about 55 million members. But Forbes is a little bit more detailed and in-depth and a little bit more challenging when it comes to our, when it comes to the hospitality industry. That's
a great explanation to kind of break both those awards or designations, if you will, down. Now, let's, if you will, look at this even further, because obviously you've managed not only 4 Diamond hotels, but also award-winning restaurants. So what do you feel is the key ingredient to staffing these type of entities?
I think the key ingredient is a team. It's having the right personality and character for the operations. These awards are fantastic. AAA, Forbes, Wine Spectator, whatever it may be, national and global awards. But first and foremost, we have to understand, in order to even get to that level, it's the team in place which is the most important. No matter how much money you want to spend for the best facilities, the best operations, you've got to focus first and foremost on developing the best culture. If you want your team to invest in your guests, you must invest in them. And I think that's the key ingredient, is creating a culture in which your team can thrive on and create success.
Now, you just said the $1 million word, culture. So let's walk this back a little bit, because that's a big statement to make a good culture for your team. To someone who may not have a clue of how to make that work or have any good ideas, unpack that for us. How do you create a good culture for your team?
Yeah, I think it's first understanding what your team wants. And what I mean by that is most people want a combination of things. They're looking for growth. They're looking for an environment in which they feel comfortable in, that they feel like is part of their family, because they may spend more time at work than their family, and they want to have some sort of a balance. So I think when you're really creating a culture, not one culture is going to fit in every organization, but understanding what your team wants and what drives them. And once you can understand that, you can better create something. For example, out here we felt that people were very active in Park City, and they really wanted to have that opportunity to be outdoors. So part of our culture is having events and activities that we're hiking together. We're doing community outreach projects outdoors together. A lot of things that are revolved around being outside. But it's really, at the end of the day, the most simplistic way to say creating a culture is putting the right leaders in place that care about their team and think of their team as family. If you can do that, the culture will start to build itself.
Now, you had talked about getting to know what drives or motivates your team, what they like to do. In particular, because many of them, like you said, are going to spend more time at work than they will at home, for example. So finding that, their passion, if you will. That can be extra difficult, especially when you have a large staff. If you've got a small hotel of, say, 10 or 15 people, you can give that one-on-one attention. But if you're talking about a couple hundred people, how do you really get to know what your staff's looking for when there is one of you and there are so many staff?
That's a great question. When I started out in this industry, I had my first leadership role. To your point, it was much easier. I had 10 people working for me, and I got to know every single one of them on a personal level. And I really got to have the opportunity to ask those questions that were important and find out what was important to them. Currently, under my operations, I have an amazing team nationwide of 6,000 people. I obviously can't do that same thing. It's impossible. But what I can do is focus on those core direct reports and create that environment for them, that work environment for them, which they can excel in, with the hopes of they'll taking that same leadership mentality, teach their directors, who then teach their managers, so on and so forth. So, you always have that fear that it's going to be somewhat like the telephone game, where your message is going to get lost in translation. You start with one message, but when it arrives to the people on the front lines, you're going to lose it. But I think the more time you can spend there on the front lines with your team and show them what you're looking for and help create that culture, the better. But, you're always going to have a little bit of miscommunication along the way. But it's really focusing if you can just focus on those direct team members that you interact with every day and allow them to focus on their team, you just hope that that's how you're going to support that structure from a larger operation.
You actually have a really good perspective for this because of being with the same company for 17 years. What have you determined, or what are you seeing now when it comes to, in the last 17 years, how has what's passionate for an employee now, how has it changed from when it was 17 years ago? What are they looking for now that they weren't looking for back then?
I think a lot of it has to do with the times and the economy, right? There were points in our history in which people, if they had a job, that's what mattered to them. Nothing else. If I had a job, I was happy because it was so hard at periods in our history to even find work. I think then it was I had a well-paying job. Then it was I had consistent jobs. And we kept seeing that evolution. I think today we're used to things becoming quite quick to us, whether it's, hey, I want to watch a movie. I don't have to go to the movie theater. I can just turn on demand. I want to buy something. Well, I just go to Amazon.com, or a better one. I want to date someone. I don't have to go to a bar and pick up a partner to go on a date. I just go on Tinder and swipe left, swipe right. It's that immediate gratification. So I think it's changed a lot for what people are looking for. People are no longer just caring about the pay. What they're caring about is someone who's going to provide that immediate gratification. So if I had to say what to me is the most important, especially seeing some of the younger generation join the culture, join our team, is to make sure you're constantly giving them feedback. Sometimes it's not always positive, but constantly letting them know how they're doing, and constantly, when they are doing something great, letting them know they're doing something great, giving them that feedback. I think if you look at that evolution, the team wants the same experience the guest has. It used to not be that. We used to be so guest-centric, so customer-centric. Now the focus really has to be, focus on the team and let them be guest-centric. So as operators, I felt like the evolution over the years is not, hey, be happy you have a job. It is, let me create a culture in which you're going to get that immediate gratification, that culture in which you're going to enjoy, and that experience that you look for when you work in one of these environments. And I think a perfect example are these tech companies. I mean, come on, you're just a retailer. When you go work for Apple, you're no different than any other retail company, right? But they gave you a really cool title, and they created a culture that's fun, and they created an environment that was a great experience. Now all of a sudden, people can't wait to work for Apple. And I think that's where people, companies like Apple or Starbucks or Google, they become very successful because they've created cultures that I think are very, very positive for coming generations. And that's really how things have changed for me and changed in our organization.
So in other words, you describe companies that have taken their employer brand, if you will, by the horns and are very aware of what their employer brand is. And because of that, they've proven to be very successful.
Absolutely. I think money is not the be-all anymore. And I think it is, people are looking for a specific work environment, and those successful companies have found a way to brand that work environment. And you hear people all the time, gosh, I can't wait for Google. They put one ad up for a job position, and they're getting thousands, if not tens of thousands of applicants. For a tech company, when back, you go back far enough, people weren't interested to work in tech companies. So yeah, that's really the key ingredient.
So now you talked a little bit about this. We were talking about the employees. You talked about guests, and I wanted to, if you will, take a little detour for just a second. We'll get back to employer brand in a moment. But one of the questions I wanted to find out from you was, how has the guest experience for hotels changed in general in the last 17 years? In other words, for what a guest was looking for back in, say, 2000, how is it different to 2017 and to 2018?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, really started, I would say, in the early 2000s, but we used to be a very service-based industry where you provided check-in service, you provided cleaning service, you provided maintenance service, a food and beverage service, and that really was where the industry was. Now we're an experience-based industry. And what I mean by that, it is, when I go to a destination, I want to feel that experience. I was at one of our properties 2 days ago in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and it's in the Smoky Mountains, and we have log cabins there, and these securities dressed up as park rangers, and you have these hiking trails and indoor water park, and it's no longer I'm checking into a hotel, but now our industry has all been experience-based. And I think it's been more than just, recently. I think Disney was the ones who started that to create an experience instead of just a service. And I think they were exceptional at doing it, because it wasn't like you're just going to pay for a ride. I'm paying to go on a ride. Instead, I'm paying overall for an admission to have an experience. So that's the big evolution that I've seen in guests. They don't just want a clean room, a quick check-in, check-out, and good food. They want to leave there with vacation memories of a lifetime.
Now, we talked about that employer brand, and when it comes to a successful employer brand, we threw out names like Apple, like Google, of course. Let's look at this from the other side. You're a hotel, large, small, branded, independent, doesn't matter. And unfortunately, your employer brand is not where you want it to be. What advice do you have to give to a hotelier that is facing a less than desirable employer brand? What's the second thing they should be doing to help right the ship, if you will?
Have as many meetings and spend as much time focusing on your team as you do your guests. I mean, there's nothing more clearly I can say. Every meeting you look at a failed brand is talking about the guest, the guest, the guest, the guest. That's all the leadership meetings. I've been in thousands of them. If you even spend a percentage of that energy and time and talking about the team, it would be unbelievable. When you talk about marketing, we talk about marketing guests. What are you doing to marketing team? When you talk about creating loyalty programs for guests, what loyalty programs do you have for your team? When you're talking about the experience, like the restaurants that you do for your guests, what does the break room look like at your property, right? What are you doing for there? When you're talking about, you want your guests to come here and experience something unique, what are you doing in the community with your team? What outreach projects are you doing? What are you doing during Thanksgiving? Are you just working them to death? Are you doing something fun to give back to your community as a group? So, as simple as I can say it is, take as much energy you focus on your guests and use that energy to focus on your team, and the results will drive themselves.
So in other words, spend as much time focusing inward as you do focusing outward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want this to sound terrible, but a small percentage of my job is focused on my guests, because I have great team members and great leaders that will do that job for me. So I just have to spend the time focusing on them so that they know I value them the same way they value our guests.
That's actually very insightful, Brian. Now, we talked about this a little bit before, but I kind of wanted to drill down when it comes to the employees, because you talked about before having such a large employee base, and of course you've had very successful growth, and congratulations on your continued growth within Westgate to now where you're overseeing multiple properties, multiple locations, and it isn't as easy to get that one-on-one touch we talked about. But in addition to finding out about the passion we talked about before, you also have to deal with training. So how do you ensure, when you deal with such a large employee base, that each employee is trained properly?
That's so hard. You can put together, for us, we put together all the training programs. We have amazing resort training managers. We actually have a program called Certified Field Trainers, where our frontline team members, the more experienced ones, are certified to train, their coworkers. We have all these training programs in place, and I think it does a great job, and I think a lot of companies have those. But I think the one thing you have to do is work on the front lines with your team, to be out there with them. I may oversee a very large operations, but guess what? Last New Year's Eve, where I was? I was behind the bar. I was bartending. Not because they need me or not because they have to, but spending that time behind the bar, I can tell you, during the busiest night of the year, how effective we are at running our operations. If you're a GM, go spend some time checking in guests. Go spend some time in the house, in housekeeping, cleaning rooms. The only way you can ensure your training is effective is spend time on the front lines with those who are delivering the experience to the guests. And all the other programs are excellent. There's so many programs and recognition programs and training programs. They're out there. They're fantastic. But everyone does that. But the one thing a lot of people forgot is what it was like to be on the front lines day in, day out. And, the higher you get in your career, you've got to think of it much different, right? You've got to think of your structure as an inverted pyramid, where you're on the bottom and you're the foundation supporting the team. So if you ever feel that you're too high to connect with that line level team member, then you're going to be ineffective. So that to me is the one way to really ensure that guest experience is delivered and effective.
In addition to that, of course, working alongside your teammates there helps build loyalty, helps build respect and commitment among everyone, because they see if the GM is doing it, it kind of makes them feel as part of a team even more so.
Absolutely. I mean, I know this seems common, but don't ask your team something you're not willing to do. But more importantly, when things are tough, really be that leader who's going to be with your team going through that environment. Now, you can't do their job every day, because if you do that, you won't be effective at your own. But as much as possible, be out there on the front lines, and you'll be able to see if that service is being delivered the way that your training department has implemented.
What I'd like to do now, Brian, if we can, because you've given such terrific advice, I'd like to wrap it up with two, final questions, if you will. But this is really geared toward those who are new in the industry, either A, who just started, B, maybe in college, or, might be contemplating a career in the hospitality industry. So I'd like to kind of give them some takeaways, if you will. So the first of the two questions is, and again, every role is, has certain must-haves that are very technical for that particular job. However, there are intangibles that run across the board. So I guess when it comes to people, when you interview people, what are the intangibles you look for in a candidate?
Attitude, work ethic, and integrity. I think those are the three you can't train on. I think someone really has to embrace an attitude that is passionate, that is caring, that is motivating, that is happy. You can't teach someone to be happy. If someone is miserable, they're just going to be that way. Work ethic, and it's not about, do I work 70, 80, 90 hours a week, but when I'm there, what kind of, what do I put into my job? What kind of energy do I put into my job? How hard do I work when I'm there? And integrity. And integrity is more than theft, or integrity is more than just, what most people consider integrity. Integrity is really doing the right things for the right reasons. It's doing what you're expected to do when no one's watching. And I think if you have those three characteristics, you can be extremely successful in the hospitality industry, even with minimal training, if you can embrace those three core values.
So in other words, those three pillars, if you will, are what you base the rest of if you will, what you're looking for behind. I mean, they can have all the technical knowledge, but if one of those three pillars is missing, it's a no-go for you.
Absolutely. I mean, it overcompensates for any amount of experience. So if you're missing one of those, I don't care what your tenure has been in the industry, you won't join my culture. Because for me, there is no exceptions for those three, because it's so critical to developing a great culture and running a strong operation.
That's incredibly insightful advice and very practical for either younger generation who are looking to get in the industry, or if you're still new in your career. Great points to keep in mind, because those three pillars are going to carry you through whatever career you have, whatever location you're at. So very invaluable information.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think, though, for the newcomers looking at the industry, just know one thing. It's a thankless industry. And I know that's hard to hear. You don't join the service industry because you're looking to be in the spotlight. You don't join the service industry because you're looking for people to praise you every day. That's not how this industry works. Unfortunately, you're going to get more negative feedback than positive feedback, because people don't always tend to say how great you are. They pretty much complain when things don't go right. But here's the thing. If you really want to make an impact, a true impact on people's lives, this is the industry that provides you that platform to do so. But this isn't going to be, this golden path that you're going to walk on. Instead, it's the path in which you're going to create for others to walk on. If you can accept that, then you're starting in the right direction in the hospitality industry. But I got to say, it's probably one of the hardest working industries there are out there, and one of the thankless industries that we have, in our economy.
What a great advice. The last question, I always love asking this question because I don't know if you're a fan of the movie Back to the Future. In Back to the Future 2, you have older Biff goes and talks to younger Biff and gives him advice, if you will. So we're going to build a time machine here and have you travel back to your younger self, if you will. Is there anything that you would tell your younger self to get better?
Wow, this is a fantastic question. I love the movie as well. Yeah, I would tell myself, focus more on the journey, not on the destination. And I guess what I mean by that is, if you're someone who really is progressive and wants to grow, I mean, I've been fortunate. I started as a bellman in this company, and now I'm the vice president of operations in 17 years, and I've been, what some people would call successful, but change what you consider to be successful. Don't just focus on that destination, that if I reach this position, I'm successful. Or if I reach this salary cap, I'm successful. Or if I own this many homes. So many people focus on that destination. I think what I would have told myself along the way is take those moments to build relationships with people along the way. Instead of trying to change the world, change one person's world. And I think that would have been my mindset change. And I'm working hard on that today. Is that, instead of running to your next meeting or running to go try to accomplish something great, take a moment and stop to interact with that housekeeper in the hallway, that, maintenance personnel, get to know them a little bit better. Like I said, really focus on that journey, because the problem is we don't know when that journey is going to end. And sometimes we're so focusing on getting to the end, and we quite frankly may never make it there. So if I had to tell myself anything, it would be that. It would simply enjoy that journey. Take that moment to look around and to enjoy those people around and make those impact on each individual along the way. So in other words, it's a gut check to really make sure you have the right definition of what success is. I mean, absolutely. We all have to define what we consider success, but for me, being a CEO of a major corporation could or could not be successful. I think, there's been some books about this, but really I think, as cryptic as this may sound, the people who attend your funeral and why they attend your funeral will probably be a good definition of your success in life. Not the position you held, not the salary you made, but the impact and why people showed up for that moment, why people showed up on that last day when you're no longer there. And I think for me, and it's something I constantly have to work on, and I encourage other people, is redefine your success. Don't let society define your success. Don't let your friends or family define your success. Don't let anyone tell you that success is quantifiable when it comes to your salary or what you own or anything. It's truly and simply the one thing we all know you'll leave behind, and that's the impact on others that you've made along the way. And if you can redefine your success in those terms and on your own terms, I think many people will be much happier. And you won't be chasing wealth as much as you'll be chasing, fulfillment. As the old adage goes, people won't remember what you said, they'll remember how you made them feel. Agreed, absolutely. Well, again, this has been a terrific conversation, Brian. I appreciate you taking some time out of your very busy schedule. Before we let you go, how can people get a hold of you if they want to pick your brain, have any questions? What's the best way to reach you? Wow, really, I'm sorry. I'm trying to think. I got all these different channels going in my mind. I mean, feel free to email me if you go my LinkedIn profile, because you can pull up my email right there. I put that on. I always love when people ask questions or engage in that. I also do some YouTube videos here and there, any kind of Facebook videos. Few and far between. I hope to do more, but again, I would love for anyone to go on my LinkedIn profile, get my email, reach out to me. Because this is what excites me. I love to hear people's feedback, and I love to answer any questions in which individuals are interested in. Terrific. And rest assured, if, again, you're on the road, if you're going for a run, if you're just away from a pen and paper, don't worry. We're going to put a link to all of Brian's contact information up on our website, which will be, again, hospitality1to1.com. Brian, terrific conversation. I wish you a successful 2018. Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Hospitality 1-to-1 podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. You can also check us out on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Hospitality 1-to-1. We're on Twitter at Hospitality 1-to-1. We also post video versions of our podcast on YouTube. Just search for Hospitality 1-to-1. And of course, you can find us on our website, which is www.hospitality1to1.com.